phone buzzed on the wooden nightstand, a sharp vibration that pierced the stillness of the midnight room. Emma stirred, reaching blindly, her fingers grazing the screen. The glow lit her face, revealing a single text that stole her breath. A name she knew too well, paired with words she never expected. "Last night was unforgettable. I can't wait again." Her heart stopped, her lungs froze, and silence wrapped around her like a noose. The world she trusted crumbled in the space between two blinks. Michael, her husband, stirred beside her, unaware of the storm unleashed by a careless slip. Emma whispered in her mind, "It can't be true." But the screen mocked her. The seconds stretched into agony. A tear slipped down her cheek, landing cold against her lips. Betrayal had a sound now, the buzz of a phone in the dead of night. And Emma knew this silence wasn't peace. It was the cold silence of a secret affair. Emma sat motionless, the weight of betrayal pressing down on her chest like an iron block. Her mind screamed to wake Michael, to demand an explanation, yet her body refused. Silence draped itself across the room like a funeral shroud. Her heart pounded, but every beat felt foreign, as though it no longer belonged to her. She remembered the vows he made, the promises whispered under candlelight years ago, and each memory now stabbed instead of soothed. Emma whispered in her head, "Why did I trust so blindly?" She traced the glow of the phone screen again, the mocking words searing themselves into her memory. The bed, once a sanctuary, now felt poisoned, the sheets wrapping her like shackles. She studied Michael's calm face, wondering if his dreams were free of guilt while hers collapsed into nightmares. The silence between them was no longer innocent. It was a cold silence carved by lies. The night seemed endless as Emma replayed every detail in her mind. The late returns, the vague explanations, the nights when his phone was face down on the table. Each piece formed a puzzle she had refused to see. Now it was undeniable, and the truth wrapped itself like barbed wire around her heart. She stared at her own reflection in the darkened window, barely recognizing the woman who sat hollow-eyed and trembling. Doubt whispered, "Maybe you're overreacting." But the text echoed louder, crueler, undeniable. She remembered laughter they once shared, and felt as though she was grieving a death that hadn't been spoken yet. In that moment, Emma realized betrayal wasn't a sudden wound, but 1,000 cuts she had ignored until now. The silence pressed against her ears until she swore she could hear it screaming. She tightened her grip on the phone, her lifeline to a truth she wished she never saw. Emma shifted her gaze toward Michael, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the storm she drowned in. His chest rose and fell with calm rhythm, and she resented his serenity. She whispered in her mind, "How can he sleep when my soul is burning?" A sudden urge to wake him surged through her veins, to demand answers, but fear pinned her down. What if denial was worse than silence? What if she shattered the life she had clung to by confronting him? Her lips parted but no sound emerged, only the taste of salt from her tears. She remembered the man she once adored, the laughter, the warmth, the promises, and now all she could see was a stranger lying inches away. The silence stretched again, not protective, but cruel. For the first time, she realized she was utterly alone even while lying beside him. The phone lay heavy in Emma's hand, its glow fading into black, leaving her in darkness darker than before. She set it quietly on the nightstand, her fingers trembling as though it carried poison. The silence pressed harder, and Emma finally exhaled, shaky and broken. Her world had tilted in a single moment, and she didn't know where the ground was anymore. She whispered softly, though Michael could not hear, "How long?" The words slipped into the shadows, swallowed by the cold night. She curled onto her side, facing away from him, though her eyes refused to close. Sleep would not come, not now, not with betrayal's venom coursing through her veins. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock, each second, a reminder that the truth had arrived, uninvited and merciless. The silence remained, sharp and suffocating, as Emma realized this was only the beginning. Morning light seeped through the curtains, painting the room with deceptive warmth. Emma stirred, her eyes swollen from sleepless tears, but her lips forced a fragile smile when Michael kissed her forehead. She whispered to herself, "Pretend for now." The silence of the night had followed her into daylight, and every word he spoke felt like an echo wrapped in lies. He joked casually about his meeting, about traffic, about coffee, and she nodded as though none of it burned. Her mind screamed for answers, but her heart still clung to the man she once trusted without hesitation. She studied his face, memorizing details that once gave her comfort, but now left her aching. Love still lived in her veins, twisted and bruised, but alive. That was the cruelest part. She didn't hate him yet, she still loved him. And love made betrayal all the more unbearable. At the breakfast table, Emma stirred her coffee in silence, watching the steam curl upward as if it carried her unanswered questions. Michael scrolled casually on his phone, laughing at a text she couldn't see. Emma forced her voice to stay steady, asking about his schedule. He replied smoothly, practiced, like a man who knew how to keep secrets tucked neatly in his pocket. She nodded, biting back the urge to confront him. Her eyes lingered on his wedding ring, the same one that had once symbolized forever. She whispered inside, "What if forever ended last night?" Her heart twisted at the thought, but she stayed silent, choosing to endure. She wanted to believe that loyalty was stronger than temptation, that love could outlast betrayal, but the evidence burned in her memory. Every sip of coffee tasted bitter, but she smiled anyway. Later that afternoon, Emma sat alone on the porch swing, the creak of wood beneath her echoing the unrest in her heart. She remembered the night he proposed under fairy lights, his promises spilling like poetry. Those words had built her entire world, and now they threatened to crumble into dust. She whispered softly to herself, "Did I mistake vows for truth?" The autumn air carried a chill that bit at her skin, but it was nothing compared to the frost inside her chest. She clutched a photo of them laughing together, their joy once genuine, now tainted with suspicion. Tears blurred the memory, but she still held it close, desperate to keep some fragment alive. The swing rocked gently, back and forth, as if mocking her uncertainty. Emma was a woman torn, still in love, but beginning to see the man she loved as someone she could no longer recognize. Emma met her closest friend, Sarah, that evening at a quiet cafe. Sarah noticed the hollow look in Emma's eyes and asked softly, "Are you okay?" Emma's lips trembled, but she forced a nod. The truth sat on her tongue, bitter and heavy, yet she swallowed it whole. She wanted to confess, to scream that Michael was betraying her, but fear gripped her throat. If she said it aloud, it would become real. Instead, she spoke of trivial things, sipping tea that tasted of nothing. Sarah reached across the table, her hand warm, her eyes filled with concern, whispering, "You don't have to hide from me." Emma smiled faintly, a mask painted over her breaking soul. Inside, she screamed, but outside, she remained quiet. The silence she carried was heavier than any secret Sarah could imagine. That night, Emma stood before the bathroom mirror, her reflection fractured by the harsh fluorescent light. She studied herself as if searching for the flaw that had invited betrayal. Her eyes brimmed with tears, and she whispered, "Was I not enough?" The question haunted her as she traced the lines of her tired face, the exhaustion of holding in pain etched deeper than any wrinkle. She remembered their early days when Michael called her beautiful without hesitation, when laughter filled every silence. Now, silence was all that remained, and beauty felt like a word that belonged to someone else. Emma pressed her palms against the sink, her knuckles pale, her shoulders trembling. She wasn't broken yet, but she felt the cracks forming, each one deeper than the last. And in that mirror, she didn't see a wife anymore. She saw a woman unraveling. The following evening, Emma noticed Michael's phone face down on the counter, his laughter lingering as he disappeared into the shower. The screen lit briefly, and though she resisted, her heart pounded with temptation. She whispered inside, "What are you hiding?" Every detail screamed suspicion. Late nights, the faint scent of perfume that wasn't hers, and the constant shadow of secrecy. Her hands trembled, hovering over the phone, but fear held her back. She knew one glance could confirm what she already dreaded. The silence of the house pressed against her chest, louder than words. She turned away, but her reflection in the glass door stopped her. Eyes filled with doubt, face marked by worry. "Don't look," she told herself, yet every nerve begged to know the truth. Betrayal didn't shout. It whispered, subtle and cruel, until even silence became unbearable. Michael emerged from the shower, his hair damp, towel around his shoulders, smiling as if nothing was amiss. He kissed Emma's cheek casually, his scent sharp with cologne that didn't belong to her memory. Her heart sank, but she smiled faintly, masking suspicion. She asked lightly, "Late night again?" His answer was smooth, a rehearsed melody of excuses, each word sharpened by her doubt. He spoke of deadlines, clients, endless meetings, but his eyes darted just enough to betray him. Emma's chest tightened, her mind replaying every inconsistency. She whispered silently, "He doesn't even realize I know." The distance between them wasn't measured in feet, but in truths untold. She stirred her tea, her hand trembling, as he scrolled his phone again. The silence stretched thin, brittle, ready to snap with one more lie. Later that week, Emma sat in the car outside Michael's office, her knuckles white against the steering wheel. His late meetings had become routine, but doubt gnawed at her until she couldn't ignore it. She waited, watching the building's doors, her pulse quickening with each passing face. Hours slipped by until finally she saw him emerge, not alone, but laughing with a woman whose hand brushed his arm too familiarly. Emma's stomach twisted, her throat dry as she whispered, "It's her." The world blurred around the edges, her focus locked on the sight she wished she hadn't seen. She ducked low in her seat, heart hammering against the glass window. In that moment, truth struck harder than any words. The betrayal wasn't hidden anymore, it was walking freely into the night. Emma's vision blurred as tears welled, but she refused to look away. Every detail burned into her memory, the way Michael leaned closer, the softness in his smile reserved once only for her. The woman's laughter rang in the night like a cruel bell, each note cutting deeper. Emma whispered, "That used to be mine." She clenched the steering wheel, nails digging into her skin, rage mixing with despair. The street light above flickered, casting sharp shadows across the scene, as though the world itself revealed his lies. She wanted to burst from the car, confront them, scream until the night shattered. But fear pinned her down. Instead, she remained frozen, a prisoner of betrayal, watching her love slip into someone else's arms. The silence of her car was deafening, filled only with the sound of her broken breathing. That night, Emma sat at the edge of her bed, the silence louder than any argument. She clutched her phone, scrolling back to the message that started it all, the words now carved into her heart. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Why wasn't I enough?" The walls closed in, suffocating her with memories of love that now felt like lies. Michael entered casually, his tone light, as if the evening had been nothing unusual. Emma studied him with eyes that saw a stranger, every smile a mask, every word a performance. She wanted to speak, to demand answers, but her voice drowned in fear. The silence stretched once more, cruel and unrelenting, binding her in chains of doubt. She lay down beside him, the distance between their bodies vast though inches apart, and the cold silence spoke louder than either of them dared to. Emma sat at the dining table after Michael left for work, his half-empty coffee mug still warm, his absence heavy. She picked up his jacket draped across the chair and felt something in the pocket. Her hands trembled as she pulled out a receipt. It wasn't for gas or groceries. It was from a hotel across town, dated just 2 nights ago. Her breath caught, her chest tightening as if the air had turned to stone. She whispered aloud, "Why there, Michael?" The silence of the house swallowed her words, mocking her hope. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she studied the details, the room number glaring back like a scar. She dropped the receipt on the table, her fingers numb, tears spilling as truth carved itself deeper into her soul. The betrayal wasn't suspicion anymore, it was fact. Later that evening, Emma searched the living room shelves, her hands brushing through scattered papers, desperate for something more. She found Michael's briefcase left open, files spread carelessly inside. Beneath them lay a photograph, folded in half. She opened it with shaking fingers and froze. It was Michael, arm around the blonde woman she had seen at his office, both smiling in a way that belonged to lovers, not colleagues. Emma gasped, her knees buckling as the image slipped onto the carpet. She whispered, "So it's true." The walls seemed to lean closer, pressing her into the floor, the truth too heavy to carry. The silence inside the house felt cruel, filled with ghosts of laughter she once believed in. She curled onto her knees, clutching the photo against her chest, her sobs muffled into her hands as the shadows deepened around her. The next morning, Emma sat in her car outside the same hotel printed on the receipt. The sky was gray, drizzle streaking the windshield, matching the storm inside her chest. She gripped the steering wheel tight, debating whether to step out. Every second felt like a battle between fear and rage. She whispered to herself, "If I see him here, I'll know." The glass fogged from her breath as she watched the revolving doors. Her pulse raced when Michael appeared, stepping outside with the woman, their laughter faint but unmistakable. Emma's heart shattered all over again, the scene unfolding like a cruel film she couldn't turn away from. She ducked low, tears blurring her vision, her fingers pressing so hard against the wheel they left imprints. She realized in that moment that her marriage had been a performance, and she had been the audience to a script of lies. Emma confronted her closest friend Sarah that evening, her voice trembling as she finally spoke the truth. "I saw him, Sarah, with her." Sarah's eyes widened, her lips parting in shock, but hesitation flickered. She looked away before whispering, "Emma, I've known for weeks." Emma's chest tightened, betrayal striking from another direction. She whispered, "You knew." The cafe walls seemed to close in, suffocating her with the weight of double deceit. Sarah reached for her hand, but Emma pulled away, her eyes filled with tears. Silence stretched between them, heavier than words. The world Emma trusted now fractured again, not just by Michael, but by the friend who stayed quiet. She rose from her chair, heartbroken twice over, her footsteps echoing against the tiled floor as she left Sarah behind in silence. Back home, Emma entered the bedroom, her movements mechanical. Michael was asleep already, his body sprawled across the bed as though nothing had changed. She stood in the doorway, clutching the photo in her fist, her chest rising with shallow breaths. The silence felt unbearable, every second filled with the memory of his laughter with another woman. She whispered under her breath, "Do you even dream of her when I lie here?" Her voice cracked, but he didn't stir. She approached the bed, her shadow stretching long across the floor. Tears slid down her cheeks, but this time they didn't fall from weakness. They burned with resolve. She placed the photograph on his nightstand, inches from his hand, a quiet declaration that the silence was ending. For the first time, Emma didn't fear the truth. She was ready to face it. Emma sat alone in her car outside Sarah's house, her chest pounding with unease. She had come to demand the truth, but fear tangled with her rage. Sarah had betrayed her with silence, but Emma suspected something deeper. She knocked, and Sarah opened the door, eyes wide, startled by her presence. Emma's voice trembled. "Tell me everything." Sarah froze, lips quivering, then whispered, "You're not ready for this." Emma's heart sank as she realized Sarah's hesitation wasn't just guilt. It was knowledge. The air grew heavy, the silence unbearable. Emma pressed harder, voice rising. "Tell me who she is." And in Sarah's eyes, Emma saw the confirmation before hearing the words. Her pulse crashed as Sarah whispered, "It's me, Emma." The world shattered in a single breath. Emma stumbled backward, her breath ragged, her mind spinning as if gravity had shifted beneath her feet. "You!" she gasped, her voice breaking into disbelief. Sarah's eyes welled, her hands trembling as she whispered apologies. Emma couldn't hear. The world blurred, Emma's heart hammering against her ribs as betrayal hit twice as deep. It wasn't just her husband, it was her closest friend. She wanted to scream, but the sound caught in her throat, leaving only silence. Sarah reached forward, tears streaming, pleading, "I never meant for this to happen." Emma recoiled, her chest aching with a pain that burned worse than rage. She whispered, "You destroyed everything." The night air grew colder, and Emma's body shook, not from chill, but from the devastation of losing both love and friendship in one cruel blow. Emma staggered down the sidewalk, the night spinning as if the stars themselves mocked her. Each step felt heavy, her mind echoing with Sarah's confession. "It's me, Emma." She collapsed against a lamppost, tears flooding her cheeks, the world blurred with grief. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, cutting into the roots of her soul. She remembered laughter-filled nights with Sarah, secrets shared over wine, promises of loyalty, all now poisoned by deceit. Her stomach churned as if every memory had turned rotten inside her. She whispered, "I have nothing left." The silence of the street wrapped around her like a cruel shroud, isolating her in the raw ache of betrayal. For the first time she felt truly abandoned, stripped of love, trust, and the very foundation of her life. Later, Emma sat in her bedroom, the photograph of Michael and Sarah lying on the nightstand. Her hands trembled as she stared at it, the image now carved with brutal clarity. "My husband and my best friend," she whispered, her voice hollow. She clenched the photo until the paper crumpled, rage spilling into her veins. Her body shook, torn between fury and despair. The silence of the room pressed against her ears, louder than screams. Michael entered quietly, smiling faintly, unaware that the veil had been ripped away. Emma's eyes locked on him, and for the first time she didn't see her husband, she saw a liar, a thief of trust. She whispered softly, "How long have you been lying to me?" His expression froze, the mask cracking. The truth was no longer hidden. Michael froze in the doorway, his smile fading into a rigid mask. Emma's voice grew stronger, echoing in the silence. "I know it's Sarah." His body stiffened, his eyes darting away, the guilt written in every movement. Emma's hands shook, but her voice cut sharper than ever. "You lied to me, you lied to us both." The silence was broken by his stammering excuses, weak words that fell useless to the floor. Emma's tears turned to fury, her chest rising with shallow breaths, her heart pounding with defiance. She stood, her shadow towering against him under the pale moonlight. "You don't get to destroy me," she whispered, her words trembling with strength. Michael's silence revealed the truth more than words could. The moment of revelation was complete. Emma knew her world would never be the same. Emma stood in the bedroom, her chest heaving, the crumpled photo still in her trembling hand. Michael's silence confirmed everything words could not. "How long?" she demanded, her voice raw, trembling with both grief and rage. He stammered, searching for an excuse, but his eyes betrayed him. Emma's tears fell freely, her face twisted with fury. She shouted, "You brought her into our lives, into my trust." Michael's voice cracked with weak denial, but it only fueled her fire. The room seemed to shake with the weight of their breaking bond. She pressed the photo against his chest, her hand trembling as she whispered, "Every time you touched me, you lied." His silence screamed louder than any words, and Emma felt the world collapse around her. Michael's voice finally broke through the silence, pleading, "It didn't mean anything." Emma laughed bitterly, the sound sharp, twisted with heartbreak. "It meant enough to destroy me," she spat, her body shaking as fury surged. Michael reached for her hand, but she pulled back violently, her eyes burning with betrayal. "You don't get to touch me now," she hissed. The air between them crackled with unspoken rage, the silence punctuated only by her shallow, ragged breaths. She shouted, "You chose her over everything we built." Michael stepped forward, his hands trembling, but Emma's glare stopped him cold. She felt the strength of her pain solidify into resolve. The silence that followed was not weakness, it was her shield. Emma's chest rose and fell as her fury spilled into words she had once swallowed. Every late night, every lie, I carried your silence like it was mine. Michael's face twisted, his excuses faltering into emptiness. She shouted louder, "You killed us with secrets." The walls seemed to close in, amplifying the storm. Michael begged, "I still love you." Emma froze, her tears breaking into bitter laughter. "Love," she whispered. "You don't betray the person you love." The words echoed in the room, slicing deeper than any blade. Emma's hands shook, but her gaze stayed locked, unwavering. For the first time, Michael faltered, his body shrinking under her wrath. Silence filled the space once more, but now it was Emma who controlled it. Michael dropped to his knees, his face twisted in desperation, pleading, "Please don't leave me." His voice cracked with panic, but Emma only stared down at him, her eyes cold through her tears. "You already lost me," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but her words struck with finality. Michael reached for her again, clinging to her dress, but she pulled away sharply, his grip sliding into empty air. The silence around them grew suffocating, punctuated only by his broken sobs. Emma's chest heaved, but strength surged in her voice. "You chose this. You chose her." Michael buried his face in his hands, his body shaking. Emma stepped back, the distance between them now permanent, defined not by space but by truth. Emma turned toward the doorway, her body trembling but her spirit unbroken. Michael's sobs echoed behind her, filling the room with shattered remnants of what once was. She paused, her hand resting on the frame, her tears still falling. She whispered softly, "I will not be destroyed by you." The words carried both devastation and defiance, a vow carved from pain. Michael rose slowly, his face hollow, reaching out once more. But Emma didn't turn back. She walked away, leaving the silence behind, not as her enemy, but as her final weapon. For in that silence she reclaimed herself. The morning light crept across the bedroom floor, soft and merciless. Emma sat at the edge of the bed, her suitcase packed, the weight of decision heavy on her shoulders. Michael stirred but did not speak, his silence no longer a shield but an admission. She whispered to herself, "This is not my prison anymore." Her fingers brushed the handle of the suitcase, trembling but firm. She had loved deeply, trusted blindly, and broken completely, but she would not remain shattered. Michael's eyes followed her, pleading without words, but Emma did not return his gaze. The silence between them was not the same. It was final, carved by truth. She stood slowly, steady now, her tears drying into resolve. Emma walked down the staircase, each step echoing like a drumbeat of finality. Her suitcase bumped softly against the wooden steps, the sound steady, measured. She remembered every laugh that once filled this house, every promise whispered, and how silence had replaced them all. Her heart twisted, but it no longer crumbled. She whispered under her breath, "This silence belongs to me now." She reached the bottom, pausing to look around at the home she once believed eternal. Every picture on the wall seemed to mock her, snapshots of a love that never survived. She inhaled deeply, her chest rising with newfound strength, and turned toward the door. Outside, the morning air was crisp, cool against Emma's skin, carrying the scent of dew and faint traffic in the distance. She paused on the porch, her suitcase resting beside her, her eyes scanning the quiet street. This was freedom and grief, entwined. She whispered, "I will not be their victim." Her heart still bled, her wounds still raw, but resolve burned stronger than despair. Behind her, the door creaked as Michael stood watching, his figure small against the light. His silence begged for her to stay, but Emma didn't turn back. She placed her hand on the suitcase handle and stepped forward, her path uncertain, but hers alone. Emma walked down the driveway, her footsteps steady, suitcase wheels rattling against the pavement. Each step pulled her further from the lies, closer to herself. She remembered the tearful nights, the silent mornings, the cruel discoveries, and realized she had survived them all. She whispered, "This is not the end of me." Michael's silhouette lingered in the doorway, shrinking with every step she took. The silence followed, but now it was hers, no longer a weapon against her but a shield around her. She reached the edge of the street, pausing to breathe deeply, her lungs filling with air that tasted like freedom. Emma stopped at the corner, turning her head slightly as though to glance back, but her eyes never reached the house. She whispered softly, "You didn't think I'd ever find out, did you?" The words drifted into the morning air, final and sharp. She straightened her shoulders, gripping the suitcase handle firmly, and stepped forward into the rising sun. The silence remained, but it no longer crushed her, it carried her. The pain would linger, the scars would remain, but Emma had chosen herself. Her story was not over. It was only beginning.